What if I told you that Black Americans are the true creators of reggae? Black Americans like Memphis-born Rosco Gordon were publicly proclaimed as the godfather of reggae. But how did an American Black Southern man from the Deep South get this title? Scope News decided to investigate this claim. But first, let's start with Nicki Minaj, the Caribbean artist, who once exclaimed that she thought "Baby, Can I Hold You Tonight" was a Jamaican song by artist Sister Nancy. She later realized it was actually written by the Black American artist Tracy Chapman, who is widely known for her popular 1988 hit Fast Car. And of course, a legal battle ensued with Nicki wanting to use Tracy's song without proper credit. That moment highlights something larger that many people don't realize. A lot of songs people associate with reggae or Caribbean music actually have deeper roots connected to Black American artists. That example is just one misconception surrounding the popularization of reggae and where many of its foundations truly came from. This is not about taking credit away from Jamaican artists, because Jamaica undeniably developed reggae into the global sound the world knows today. However, some of the biggest hits in Jamaican music, especially the songs that crossed into the American market, have often been written, produced, or heavily influenced by Black Americans. When Bob Marley first began building his audience in the United States, he was introduced to key American industry figures and audiences through Black American networks in music. Marley himself openly spoke about the music he listened to growing up. Artists such as Curtis Mayfield, Ray Charles, Fats Domino, and James Brown were major influences across the Caribbean. Those sounds, American rhythm and blues, soul, gospel, and early rock and roll, were constantly playing on Jamaican radio stations during the 1950s and 1960s. Jamaican musicians studied those records closely, and those rhythms helped shape the earlier styles of ska and rocksteady, which later evolved into reggae by the late 1960s. Before reggae became global, it was built on a foundation of Black American sound. In 1960s Jamaica, U.S. radio flooded the island with Motown, soul, and R&B, shaping young artists like Bob Marley and the Wailers. Their early style even mirrored groups like Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. Marley openly admitted this influence, saying American soul music was what they heard and learned from. At the same time, Black American singer Johnny Nash helped change everything, signing Marley and the Wailers, bringing them to the UK, and opening doors that pushed their music beyond Jamaica and onto the world stage. He also made history himself, becoming the first artist to bring a reggae hit to the Billboard charts, further cementing his role in introducing the sound to a global audience. Another example people rarely talk about involves LaToya Jackson, the sister of Michael Jackson. She co-wrote one of the biggest reggae crossover songs of the 1980s performed by Jimmy Cliff, Reggae Night. Some people online have claimed she merely covered the record, but the publishing credits show she was one of the writers. The song went on to become one of the biggest reggae crossover hits of its era, which again shows how often Black American songwriting sits quietly behind records people assume belong solely to reggae history. Publishing credits also tell an interesting story when it comes to one of the most famous reggae songs ever recorded. One Love, People Get Ready by Bob Marley incorporates the civil rights era song People Get Ready, written by Curtis Mayfield. Because of that interpolation, Mayfield is officially credited as a songwriter on the reggae anthem. Marley absolutely made the song legendary, but the publishing trail shows the deep connection between reggae and earlier Black American soul traditions. Another example from the modern era is the massive Caribbean crossover hit Turn Me On by Kevin Lyttle. The melody structure references the R&B record All My Love by the Grammy-winning group 112. Once again, a record many listeners categorize as Caribbean pop or reggae crossover has Black American songwriting sitting inside its musical DNA. But the connection goes much deeper than songwriting credits. Jamaican artists themselves have openly spoken about the American music they grew up listening to. One of the pioneers of Jamaican DJ culture was the legendary reggae DJ U-Roy. He is widely known as the originator of toasting, the rhythmic speaking style performed over records that later influenced dancehall culture and eventually hip-hop. However, in interviews, U-Roy explained that Jamaican artists listened to large amounts of American rhythm and blues and soul music. He even said that the way he phrased his voice was influenced by the Black American musician Louis Jordan, the band leader known as the King of the Jukebox. That is important because toasting is often described as something that began purely within Jamaican sound system culture. Yet academic research shows that rhythmic spoken delivery over music already existed decades earlier in Black American traditions such as talking blues, radio DJ patter, and stage performance styles from the 1930s and 1940s. One well-documented example is the Black American radio personality, Douglas Jocko Henderson, whose energetic rhythmic style on Philadelphia radio influenced audiences across the Caribbean. Jamaican sound system selectors heard broadcasts like these and incorporated similar rhythmic speaking styles into their performances. Even the technical side of DJ culture predates reggae. Sound systems involving microphones, mixers, and multiple turntables were already being used in Black American jazz clubs, R&B venues, and radio stations long before Jamaican sound systems became famous. Historical records also show that Jamaican producer Coxsone Dodd was exposed to American rhythm and blues culture while working in the United States. When he returned to Jamaica, he helped develop large portable sound systems that played American R&B records for local crowds. Those sound systems became central to Jamaican music culture during the 1950s. Another piece of the story involves migration timelines. Jamaican immigration to the United States did not increase significantly until after the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. By that point, Black American music had already produced blues, jazz, gospel, R&B, soul, funk, disco, and early hip-hop foundations. This timeline is important to bring up because it shows that many of the musical ingredients that shaped reggae, rhythm and blues bass lines, gospel-influenced vocals, and soul phrasing were already well established in Black American communities before reggae developed as its own genre. Another overlooked connection comes from Black American R&B and rock artist Rosco Gordon. Gordon recorded songs in the early 1950s with a distinctive offbeat piano rhythm that later resembled the signature skank rhythm heard in ska and reggae. Hence the reason why he is considered the godfather of reggae in major publications. Jamaican artist Theophilus Beckford would release the 1961 song Trenchtown Ska, which was direct copy of Rosco Gordon's 1952 hit song No More Doggin' Record without proper credit initially. Jamaican musicians were heavily listening to American rhythm and blues during that period, and historians say Gordon's rhythm style became one of the musical patterns that helped influence the sound that reggae would later develop. Johnny Nash, another figure who rarely gets mentioned in reggae conversations, is the Black American singer known for his 1968 recording Hold Me Tight, which became one of the earliest reggae-style songs to chart internationally. Nash also played a direct role in Bob Marley's early career. Nash and his manager, Danny Sims, traveled to Jamaica in the late 1960s searching for new music. They discovered Marley and the Wailers and later recorded songs with them through JAD Records, including early versions of Stir It Up. Even the structure of reggae singing reflects American influence. Rocksteady and reggae singers such as Alton Ellis and Ken Booth were sometimes compared to American soul singers because their vocal phrasing closely resembled Motown-style delivery. Jamaican artists also recorded reggae versions of American soul songs, including Booth's version of Ain't No Sunshine, originally recorded by Bill Withers. All of this shows that reggae did not appear in isolation. Jamaica absolutely gave reggae its identity, its rhythm, and its global cultural voice. But the musical ingredients that shaped it, soul phrasing, rhythm and blues structure, gospel emotion, DJ vocal traditions, and even some industry connections, were deeply connected to Black American culture. In other words, reggae was born in Jamaica, but it grew from a musical environment where Black American sounds, songwriting, and performance traditions were already circulating throughout the Caribbean. In a BBC documentary 2002, Reggae, The Story of Jamaican Music, Jamaican artists directly admitted to studying Black Americans artists for inspiration. There seems to be a familiar pattern of erasure when it comes to Black American musical origins. Just like with the erasure of proper credit from hip-hop music, with Jamaican-born DJ Kool Herc getting the credit solely, but no proper credit for reggae for Black Americans. You see, when you check the publishing, the credit somehow manages to always reroute back to Black Americans, and that rarely gets discussed. There would be no One Love without Curtis Mayfield, and even some of the biggest hip-hop records belong to Black American artists like James Brown. When the interviews are read, when the publishing credits are examined, and when the historical timelines are laid out clearly, the story becomes much harder to ignore. Black Americans were not just listeners to reggae. In many cases, they were part of the musical DNA that helped shape the sound long before the world recognized the genre. This report is based on interviews, historical records, and verified publishing credits. Sources include statements from Bob Marley on American soul influence, and research on early Black American DJ culture and talking blues, Roy crediting Louis Jordan, and songwriting credits tied to records like One Love Reggae Night and Turn Me On. Additional references include Johnny Nash's role in Bob Marley's early career and documented links between Rosco Gordon's rhythm and early ska. Legal disclaimer. This content is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. It is based on research and publicly available records believed to be accurate. This report is not intended to discredit any group, but to present historical connections.